This episode uses an AI voice. Thank you for listening. Welcome. Today's episode is based on the book Military Industrial Base, A Short History. Our discussion comes from the section Forged in Fire, The Rise of the Modern Military Industrial Base. When we think about the Second World War, we often remember the great battles, famous leaders, and powerful weapons. But there is another story behind those events. It is the story of factories, engineers, scientists, workers, and industries. This was the period when the modern military-industrial base truly took shape. The years from 1940 to 1950 changed the world forever. As the war spread across Europe, Africa, and Asia, the world divided into two major camps. Germany, Italy, and Japan formed the Axis powers. On the other side stood the Allies, led by the United States, the United Kingdom, and the Soviet Union, supported by many other nations. They also drew manpower and resources from colonies across South Asia, Africa, and other parts of the world. This war was unlike earlier conflicts. Military success depended not only on soldiers, but also on the ability to produce weapons, vehicles, fuel, and supplies on an enormous scale. One of the biggest changes came from Germany's new style of warfare, known as Blitzkrieg, or lightning war. Instead of slow-moving armies, Germany relied on speed, coordination, and surprise. Fast-moving panzer tank divisions, supported by aircraft and mobile artillery, broke through enemy lines before defenders could react. Have you ever wondered why France's famous Maginot Line failed? The answer is simple. Fixed fortifications could not keep up with fast-moving mechanized forces. The war had changed, but many military planners were still thinking like it was the First World War. Germany's success did not happen overnight. Years of industrial investment, careful planning, and military production helped create this powerful fighting force, even while working around the restrictions imposed after the First World War. But the Soviet Union responded in a remarkable way. Entire factories were moved east, away from advancing German forces. Production continued even under incredibly difficult conditions. The Soviet T-34 tank reflected a different approach to military production. It was not always the most advanced tank on the battlefield, but it was reliable, easier to manufacture, and produced in huge numbers. This brings us to an important point. Sometimes quantity becomes a strength of its own. Germany focused on advanced technology. The Soviet Union focused on mass production. Both approaches reflected their political systems, industrial capacity, and available resources. Then another major turning point arrived. The United States entered the war. Its enormous industrial strength earned it the title Arsenal of Democracy. American factories produced vast numbers of tanks, aircraft, ships, vehicles, and ammunition. These supplies supported not only American forces, but also allied nations through programs such as Lend-Lease. The Sherman tank may not have matched every German tank in battle, but it was dependable and produced in extraordinary numbers. American shipyards launched cargo ships and warships at a pace the world had never seen before. This success came from close cooperation between government, private industry, universities, and researchers. Civilian factories adapted to military production. Innovation accelerated. A lasting partnership between government and industry began to take shape. The war itself stretched far beyond Europe. In North Africa, mechanized forces fought across harsh deserts. In Italy, strong Allied logistics helped defeat an enemy whose supply lines had become overstretched. In the Pacific, Japan demonstrated impressive naval and air power. But over time, its industrial base could not replace losses as quickly as the United States could. The war ended with the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. These events changed warfare forever. The atomic bomb demonstrated something far larger than a new weapon. It revealed what could happen when science, industry, and government worked together on an unprecedented scale. By 1945, the global industrial map had been transformed. Much of Europe lay devastated. Germany and Japan had lost much of their industrial strength. The United States emerged stronger than before. The Soviet Union, despite enormous human and material losses, retained a vast military-industrial base. Together, these two nations would dominate the Cold War that followed. Many newly independent countries faced a different reality. India gained independence in 1947. Like many other nations, it had contributed manpower and raw materials during the war, but had only limited defense manufacturing of its own. Leaders increasingly realized that political independence alone was not enough. Strategic independence also required the ability to design, manufacture, and maintain military equipment at home. China also recognized the importance of building its own defense industry. Around the world, countries began reducing their dependence on former colonial powers and started investing in their own industrial capabilities. Here's something interesting. The biggest lesson of the war was not only about military tactics, it was about industrial strength. Governments began investing more heavily in research, manufacturing, engineering, and defense infrastructure. The early Cold War accelerated this trend even further. Military industries became a permanent part of national strategy, rather than a temporary wartime necessity. This brings us to the central lesson of today's discussion. The 1940s transformed the military-industrial base from a supporting function into one of the foundations of national power. Victory no longer depended only on courageous soldiers or brilliant commanders. It also depended on the ability to innovate, manufacture, supply, and sustain increasingly complex military systems. Even today, many of the relationships between government, industry, science, and the armed forces can be traced back to this remarkable decade. Before we finish, here's one question to reflect on. When you think about national security, do you think first about weapons or about the industries, engineers, scientists, and workers who make those weapons possible? Often, the real strength of a nation begins long before a battlefield. Thank you for listening. I hope today's discussion has given you something useful to think about. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to read more, the ebook Military Industrial Base, A Short History, is available on Amazon Kindle. You'll find the link in the description below. Until next time, take care, keep learning, and keep moving forward.